Dianne M. Bazell, Strife among the Table Fellows, Conflicting Attitudes of Early and Medieval Christians Toward the Eating of Meat. In the Journal of the American Academy of Religion, Volume 65, Issue 1, 1997. A brief biography for the author and a link to the full text of the paper is provided in the description. While modern-day conversation about consumption of and abstinence from meat often draw from Greco-Roman philosophy and religious traditions of India, Bazell argues that early and medieval Christian history has much valuable and relevant contribution. Far from simplistic, early and medieval Christian theologians held widely divergent and sometimes positively contradictory assessments of the natural world. Paul's letters are prominent in discussions on meat consumption by Christians. There are two conflicting messages in his letters. On the one hand, he defends ascetic dietary restraint. On the other hand, he argues against food preoccupation. Examples include Romans 14, 1 Corinthians 8, and 1 Corinthians 10. Dietary restriction is linked to bodily discipline while also being unlinked to salvation. Bazell explains that this seeming conflict emerges from Paul's efforts to encourage peaceful coordination between Jewish and Gentile converts by minimizing the importance of dietary habits. Consequently, a distinctively Christian ambivalence toward the practice of eating meat or refraining to do so emerged. Most early and medieval Christian monastic practices included dietary discipline as a facet of bodily discipline that trained the soul. Among the oft-denied was meat, a food regarded as inappropriately delicate and coddling, and as a potent and forceful stimulant for lust. This latter association is based on the humorally based medical theory, in which good health was achieved by the balance of heat, cold, moisture, and dryness via dietary regimen. It was believed that foods that were both hot and moist, like meat, wine, and heated foods, increased sexual potency and fertility. In addition to sensuality, meat was associated with wealth, softness, and luxury, which conflicted with the purposes of most monastic orders. While meat made a common appearance on the list of forbidden foods, monastic regulation was varied. Leeway was often given for the sick and sometimes those who were traveling. In the 9th and 10th centuries, relaxation of monastic regulation, as Benedictine monasteries proliferated, included the elderly and children among those exempt from the restrictions on meat. There are questions, too, about the extent of the restrictions. What counted as meat? The Rule of Benedict, for instance, forbids the flesh of quadrupeds for monks in good health. Does this mean that fowl was permissible? Individual monasteries adopted wide or narrow readings depending on the interpretation of the abbot. While abstinence from meat was a common feature of monastic life, the practice of this discipline outside monasteries was viewed with suspicion. Bazell, looking back at the Pauline missiological strategy of table fellowship, recalls the apostles' emphasis on the fundamental unimportance of dietary matters and disavowal of food's intrinsic worth. This had the unintended consequence of defining Christians as being, in part, people liberated from dietary practices, people unencumbered by any dietary restrictions, and non-Jews. Because of this understanding of the Christian person, and because of the association of Christian abstinence from meat with rigorous and observant monastic orders, the refusal to eat meat was sometimes used as a metric for Christian identity. That is, for a person whose faith was unknown, meat abstinence was regarded as a sure sign that they were heretics or non-Christians in general. The mid-13th century Dominican Inquisitor Moneda of Cremona remarked, "Heretics forbid certain foods, but Christians will eat anything." Bazell reconciles these two historical stances, monastic abstinence from meat as appropriate discipline and non-monastic abstinence from meat as the sign of a heretic, according to social context. In communities with fellow Christians, renunciation of meat was a means to compare and critique among monastic orders, for whom dietary restriction was an element of soul training. In communities with people of suspect Christian identity, renunciation of meat was a means to detect outsider infiltration, according to the Christian self-conception as a people free from dietary restrictions. Bazell concludes, "We have now seen the historical roots of such ambivalent views toward the eating of meat. The Christian movement was forged together in part by means of table fellowship among diners of diverse mores. It is no small paradox that the efforts exerted to convince these strange table fellows that no mere dietary practice should divide them, in turn provided a standard by which to identify and dismiss interlopers at the Christian banquet.